Hello everybody, my name's Glen Harris, Soil Fertility Extension Specialist in Tifton, Georgia with the University of Georgia. And today I'm going to be talking to you about potassium management on cotton. As you know, potassium deficiency is probably our biggest nutrient problem on cotton in Georgia and in the southeast. We seem to do a pretty good job with nitrogen, and we don't seem to have a lot of phosphorus problems. So potassium seems to be our #1 issue. Some years potassium is worse than others. This year in 2020, we seem to have a challenging year on potassium with a lot of potassium deficiencies, probably for a number of reasons. And a lot of people think it's because we had a lot of rainfall. I'm not sure that was the exact reason. In fact, a lot of people are saying, does our potassium leach more than it used to? And yeah, we got a lot of rainfall, but we've had rainy years before. And the other thing is potassium's not as mobile as nitrogen. We have a tendency now to think about it as mobile as nitrogen, but potassium doesn't move in the soil with water as bad as nitrogen does. So I'm not sure that's the issue. So really, to tell you the truth, are there any magic bullets on how to solve these problems? Probably not. Soil testing and putting the recommended potassium out at planting. And then if you need to supplement later on in the year, probably foliar feeding during peak bloom is basically the strategy. But there's a lot of things, other things you can think about in there, and some other reasons why we might have seen some problems. One is pH, of course, is very important to the uptake of nutrients. Actually, potassium is probably not that affected on pH being too high or too low. However, we have seen a lot of high soil pHs, and with them come high calcium levels in the soil. And the problem with that is, if you remember your the CCA training on cation exchange capacity, if you get too high calcium levels in the soil, we don't have a very high cation exchange capacity to begin with, so the potassiums don't have a lot of spots to stay on the soil, and they can leach out. So going back to that thing about they leach, if you have a lot of calcium, high levels of calcium, and I'm talking levels, I've been seeing some pHs up around 7.0 and calcium levels are 2,000 or 3,000. Really, we want to be more around 6 to 6.5 on pH, and soil test calcium of 1,000 shouldn't be a problem. But when you start getting that high, that might be one of the issues. What can you do about that? Basically, if you're at pH 7, don't lime anymore. And even gypsum, is going to add to the calcium issue. So if you're rotating with peanuts, so think about that. Before we get to some of the management practices and talking about how we might fix potassium problems, I thought I'd tell you a little bit about this site you're standing in. Now I'm going to finish talking about a potassium timing trial where we made close to 4 bale cotton. Obviously, this is not the site. We harvested that site 2 weeks ago. This particular site, we're standing at the Bowen Farm, what we call the Bowen Farm, one of the research farms near the Tifton campus. This is unique because it's on the east side of Tifton. It's on what we call flatwood soil, traditional tobacco production. But the other interesting thing about this site, overall, it's got very low soil test potassium. So what you're seeing behind me here is that this is also, it's not dry land and it's not center pivot or lateral irrigated. We irrigate it with a towable gun. But this cotton that I'm standing in right here, where you see no bolls, has had basically no water and no fertilizer, including no potassium fertilizer. And you can see that's also what's going to make is no cotton. You get further behind me in this direction, here the water sitting, so we're getting at least some cotton, but that also did not have any NPK through the middle. So you see the importance of water. But if you looked at the sides, further out on both sides, where it's irrigated and fertilized, we're going to make decent cotton. We're probably going to not make 3 bale, but we're going to make decent cotton. So I thought this was an interesting site to show you. And it's kind of an extreme. Not all sites would do this. You get on a good soil with more clay in it, irrigated, fertilized well, or even, over the years and then stop 1 year, you'd probably look a little better than this. But this is kind of an extreme example of what happened to this cotton. One way we can look at this is actually with the 4 R's of fertilization. Hopefully a lot of you have heard about the 4 R's of fertilization, and they are rate, source, placement, and timing. And again, you figure out how that's an R. It sounds like an R, an S, a P, and a T. But you have to have the right rate, the right source, the right placement, and the right timing. And what's interesting is those get all kind of mixed up together. And in fact, sometime if you're putting on potassium late, you might use a different source. So it's kind of interesting. In fact, when we do research studies, and I've done a lot of different research studies over the last 10 years, before I forget, I want to thank the Georgia Cotton Commission, and also Georgia Plant Food Educational Society and Waters Lab for supporting all my cotton research. But when I do the research, sometimes I'll focus on one of those R's and have to make the others constant so we can kind of sort them out. So if we run through those real quickly, thinking about potassium management on cotton, let's talk about rate. Rate should be fairly straightforward. Send your soil sample, do a good job of soil sampling, send it to a private lab or university lab, and follow the recommendations. They might be a little different. University labs you might think are too low, or university private labs will be higher. But as long as you're using a reputable lab, you're comfortable with the recommendations. The other thing, at the University of Georgia, we actually will increase NP and K, so including K, by yield goal, going from 1.5 bales up to 3 bales. And I've also now looking at how much more fertilizer you need for 4 bales. And a lot of you have seen me talk about it, and you know that how much fertilizer you need for 4, you fertilize for 3 bales, and then you put a little more, all right? And that's what it does turn out to, and I can give you the exact numbers on that. So that's rate. The other thing I would tell you, and going back to the pH and everything, is variable rate, or a grid sample and variable rate application. Good idea on lime for pH and potassium, because a lot of times these problems in the field aren't the whole field. They're your weak spots in your field. And if you go with the same rate of lime or the same rate of K across, what's going to happen is your good spots are probably going to get better, and your bad spots are going to get worse, and it just makes it even, the gap just widens as time goes on. So think about that. All right, so that was rate. Source is pretty easy. Soil applied early on before we plant or right after we plant, you're talking muriate of potash or K-Mag. Of course, K-Mag has magnesium and sulfur in it, so if you need those, great. It's a little more expensive, but if you need those, great. If you don't, muriate of potash should be fine. And then I'm not going to talk a lot about foliar today, but that's the other thing, and where rate and source and timing and all that comes in. Rate, you're looking for about 10 pounds of K2O per acre on a foliar. Potassium nitrate's a good source for that, and there's other ones too. As far as placement of potassium, really the only thing that comes up for our pre-plant or soon after we plant applications of potassium, like muriate of potash, is broadcast versus banding. And actually, we've done that research also, and we have not seen a big advantage of banding potassium close to the row compared to broadcasting. As long as your soil test Ks are medium or better, you're probably not going to see any effect to save any money. Sometimes people will tell you if you band, you can reduce your rate. That's a good way to reduce your yield too, because plants need so many nutrients, and if it doesn't matter if you band it or broadcast it, you don't want to reduce your rate. That brings me to timing, and that's the one I really wanted to talk about the most. It's the one I think we need to do a lot more work on, one of the areas we have not worked on enough, because I get a lot of questions about, should I split my potassium? Some at planting, some at side dress, and then how late's too late to put out potassium on the ground. With nitrogen, we know after the 3rd week of bloom, we don't like to put nitrogen on the ground. That research has been done. But with potassium, where is that number? So I've started I've done some split application research over the years, but I really want to nail that down with a lot more locations, etc. And what we have found so far is, and I've done this at the Expo site in Moultrie, I've even done it on a deep sand and stripling irrigation park, where if you thought split applications were going to work, okay, that should be the place. And have not seen a lot of advantage of split applications of potassium on cotton. It also depends on how you split it, because if you put the recommended rate of potash at planting and then put some extra at side dress, sure, that's probably going to work. But if you try to split it like half at planting and half at side dress, you can already cause a problem by side dress time. This year I also did, like I've done some split work with nitrogen, put 25% out at planting, 75 at side dress, or the flip of that, 75 at planting, 25, and I've also put some on really late. So right now, I don't have any research data and evidence to say that we need to get away from what is currently recommended, which is put the recommended rate out at potash, load that plant up. A lot of these plants are fruiting earlier, so we want to make sure we have that potash in the beginning. And then if you start running out at the end, third week of bloom, second week of bloom, even fourth week of bloom, consider a foliar application of potassium.